if we dug more, I'm sure we'd probably find some needles in here.
The freeway off-ramps in Georgetown used to be prime real estate for bridge squatters.
I believe this is the Champagne Room, which is one of the most famous bridges in Seattle.
Dwayne Barton isn't homeless anymore, but he knows this area well.
I've been down here when this place had just trash everywhere. This little creek that runs down and through here, it was just a garbage creek.
He used to come down here to see friends, maybe even spend the night, until the Department of Transportation launched a recent cleanup campaign to rid Georgetown of its bridge squatters.
There were so many kids down here making a big mess, more or less, and the people can drive by and see all of the area down here. And so they put up, you know, postings, and more or less, if you get caught down here, you're going to get fined, possibly arrested, you know, but that's only been recently. Before, this place was packed with people.
On any given night, Dwayne says there would be a good 30 or 40 people living under the bridge. The place was covered with blankets and beds.
People would come back in here, they'd be throwing parties here at night because this is just a safe place that's covered, it's out of the rain. They'd rather stay here than in a shelter because a lot of times if people go into the shelters, they're people who have illnesses or diseased or whatever, you know, they'll be going in there. And these kids, they don't want to be around that. So they come out here, which is actually surprisingly safe to sleep under these bridges, as long as you're in a group of people that you know. You do what you got to survive. And these bridges have been a home, you know, for people who don't have one.
When the streets are your home, you do what you have to do to survive. That could mean sleeping in front of a church or any place you can throw your sleeping bag.
Hey, you spare a cigarette, man? My last one. That's cool. Have a good day, man.
It's been a week since our first meeting with Shadowhawk. We spent a good portion of the day with him spanging on University Way.
Spare any change? Spare some change? Spare change for a lost cause?
As the midnight hour approaches, we ask Shadowhawk where he's going to sleep.
This is the alley right here.
Shadowhawk takes us a half a block off the Ave, down a dark alleyway, to his favorite dumpster.
This is my bed.
Shadowhawk says he prefers sleeping in a cardboard recycling bin instead of under a bridge because it's safer. Plus, he says cardboard provides good padding and insulation if you arrange it properly.
Organize the cardboard. Throw it down so it's nice and flat. Throw out what you don't want. Just pick it up when you're done and people don't bitch. Cops know people sleep under the bridge and they know they sleep in dumpsters, but they can't check every single dumpster, and they usually don't even try.
Shadowhawk says he doesn't sleep here every night. Sometimes he'll stay in a shelter or at a friend's house. But when he does, there are certain precautions to take.
If you ever had to sleep in a dumpster, make sure it's cardboard only. And make sure that there weren't any heroin addicts in there beforehand. You might get pricked by something.
Next, what do police, social workers, and businesses have to say about the kids they see every day on the streets? And later,
Hey, Doug.
Shadowhawk goes home to meet his father. What does he think about his son's future?
We trust that God has a plan for him.
The homeless have always been with us. It's not uncommon to avoid making eye contact, to not be bothered. But when they're young people, we tend to have more sympathy and ask more questions.
Maybe they didn't have the safety net many of us had when we were growing up. Maybe they never really had a fair chance to make it.
I've noticed you haven't been around as much, man. It's nice.
Oh, that's because I lost my little crash pad out here in the youth.
For the past 8 years, Tyler Bauer has been reaching out to young people in need. As program manager of Street Youth Ministries, a nonprofit, faith-based group serving homeless and at-risk youth, he gives referrals and offers guidance to youth who may not have had much direction in the past.
Most of the youth that we deal with at Street Youth Ministries are youth that were dealt a very bad hand. We've seen kids come from places where, at this point, they're surviving. And when you're surviving, you can't live by what you think is right and wrong at times. There are kids that we know that are doing behaviors that they wouldn't do if they had the choice, but they're in a tough place. What's up, man?
Bauer says there is a false stigma attached to street kids, a stigma he'd like to correct.
The stigma is, in my opinion, that these are people who have chosen their lifestyle, and they've chosen a bad lifestyle, and if they're breaking laws, they're doing it because they're bad people. And that doesn't hold up.
They have left some really bad situations, and they are surviving in very, very difficult situations.
So this is our drop-in center.
Ron Ruthruff is a jack of all trades when it comes to helping the homeless.
But the older I get, the more I call them kids.
For the past 25 years, he served as a counselor, case manager, clinical worker, and director of program development at New Horizons Ministries. He says street kids have one thing in common.
Mostly what we find is that most of the young people that are on the streets have suffered some sort of trauma, either in their family or in their community. That trauma gets worked out in a lot of very sad ways on the street, and one of those ways is kids begin to prostitute, sell themselves. One little girl once sat in my office and said, "Why not sell it, Ronnie? My dad got it for free." That begins to tell you how deep the wounds are from sexual abuse and sexual exploitation.
It is the most tragic, unfortunate part of the story. Yet in our conversations with street kids, no one indicated or perhaps was willing to admit that prostitution was that prevalent. What is prevalent is drug use.
I am dealing with, from my experience, mostly a drug-addicted crowd.
Officer Rob Brown of the Seattle Police Department has been working in the University District for the past 10 years. Not every street kid takes drugs, he says, but most of them do.
Usually, from my experience, at some point, addiction becomes a problem for those individuals, and that's part of what keeps them here. To Union 88, we're still on our detail.
Officer Brown says he prefers patrolling the University District by bicycle because it's easier to confront suspicious behavior. What is he looking for?
Paying attention to people's hands, paying attention to when they're gathered together, if they're sort of huddled together furtively. I mean, the body language of someone who's conducting a deal is fairly obvious in that they really don't want to be seen.
It's quite common to see street kids smoking marijuana on the Ave, but Officer Brown says they don't usually get arrested.
Marijuana has been voted as Seattle's lowest priority. We still take enforcement action when it comes to marijuana, although what that usually means is if it's a misdemeanor amount, if it's less than 40 grams, what we're going to do is we're going to place that marijuana into evidence. They're not going to go to jail if that's the only violation that they're looking at, most likely.
So what do businesses on the Ave think about all this? Well, no one complained specifically about drug use, but several shop managers were worried about the constant presence of young people hanging out in front of their stores. No one would go on camera with their complaints for fear of retaliation. Off camera, one manager said that loitering youth were hurting his business because customers felt threatened as they walked past them. Another store manager called the street kids of the University District pests. Now, on camera, the response from shop owners is very different.
$2.25.
Gary Kelfner, owner of Cafe Appassionato on the Ave, says he hasn't had any problems in the 4 years he's run his espresso stand.
The woman who I bought it from, she wasn't a real people person at all, and there was a lot of graffiti on the doors and the walls and the windows even. And since I bought the shop, that's stopped. And I think a big reason is because I treat the street kids respectfully, and they in turn respect me.
On the street, the response from residents is also mixed.
It's rough for merchants, you know. Like there's a lot of times when I'm walking down the street, especially like out in front of the Rite Aid down here, and they're just blocking.
I feel genuine hostility, but I don't feel like it's really threatening. However, I do avoid it at night.
And they can get out and get their own. They ain't got to be, you know, out here bumming and humming, you know.
Give me all your money for some crack rocks and a bowl of vanilla ice cream. No, the ice cream.
Veronica Pullis, the street musician, suspects the bad economy could have something to do with the recent criticism.
I've noticed that there's a lot more people getting irritated with other people that are, like, spanging or whatever. People say that we're, like, a drain on the community, kind of, and we bum money off people and we make the economy worse, but it's just the way we choose to live or the way that we have to live, and I don't understand why people have such a big problem with it.
Underneath a subtle resentment towards street kids rests a bigger question. Why don't they find a job?
I don't really care when people say get a job. That's because, well, I think that it should be easy for me to get a job, but it's not.
20-year-old Liam O'Brien has been homeless for 2 years. He says he's had a few jobs, but he's had a hard time keeping them.
I have scoliosis and I have some mental disorders. I'm pretty much just nuts, but like I've had jobs, I've been managers. I'd be happy to get a job, but it's really hard for me to find something I can do. And getting a job actually while being homeless with our economy right now, it's not that easy. It's really not that easy.
Yeah, about a month ago, month and a half, I was putting in applications for jobs. I just, it just hit me, dude. I'm so sick of the streets.
22-year-old Jay Perry has been homeless for 4 years. He's had jobs before, but he too finds it tough to keep them. 4 years on the streets has taken its toll.
You want all this nice stuff. You just want to be clean and you want to look nice. You don't want to be labeled as a homeless, scumbag youth person. You pay a lot more price to be free than you think, I feel like I'm mentally feeling like I'm always depressed, I'm always angry, I'm always fighting with my girl because we don't know what we're going to do or, get money or marijuana. And I haven't even showered in like a week. It's just, there's so many different variables that just weigh down on you. I mean, yeah, homeless is awesome. I like it, but I would not recommend anybody doing this. I mean, if you have a place to go, if you have somebody who will help you, help yourself, you got to take that.
What's holding you back, do you think?
Myself. It's all in my head, something, I mean, I got to quit doing, marijuana or something. I mean, I love marijuana. It's just, it holds me back.
Tyler Bauer says it's tough to change the lives of street youth that are chemically addicted and or suffering from mental illness. The turning point, he says, begins with building a positive, stable relationship with them, a relationship they may have never had.
We try to come alongside and be in a relationship with them as healthy adults and see what we can do, connect them with services, and hopefully re-enter them into communities that they can be loved in. Coming at them with a line of, go get a job, it's just a misplaced line because maybe it's a 15-year-old that doesn't have ID, that didn't have input from their parents, that are struggling to get by and don't know how to get by. What's up, man? How you doing? Haven't seen you in a bit.
For the past year, Tyler has been nurturing a relationship with a familiar face.
My goal is summer semester for sign language interpretation.
Where at?
Cascadian, the double boxing. That's where my brother goes there.
Wicked. Have you talked to him about financial aid?
I have.
Shadow Hawk says he wants to enroll in college. He also drops another surprise on Tyler.
Like, you're going to church. Can I just tell you how crazy that is to me right now? I love it. I'm like, hey, dude, one thing at a time.
Hey, Doug.
Next, Shadow Hawk goes to Woodinville to meet his father. What does he have to say about his son's life on the streets?
When we first met Shadow Hawk, we were a bit surprised to find out that he visits his family just about every week.
In fact, most of the street kids we talked to said they didn't want to have anything to do with their parents, but Shadow Hawk does. And when we asked him and his father if we could join them on one of their visits, they said yes.
Hey, Doug.
On a Friday afternoon in Woodinville, Shadow Hawk meets his father, Eric Critchlow, in a bank parking lot. Every month, Shadow Hawk receives $638 in federal supplemental security income for various disabilities he's been diagnosed with, including Asperger's syndrome, a form of autism, and bipolar disorder. His father is a government-appointed payee. In our conversation with Eric Critchlow, we soon learned that Shadow Hawk grew up in a middle-class Redmond neighborhood, and that his real name is Keith.
It was apparent very early in Keith's development that there were some challenges. As he's grown and developed, there's been 5 diagnoses, neurological challenges that Keith faces, and early on it was somewhat manageable with medication, but even that was a challenge. That kind of came to a culmination when he got bigger. He's a big kid at 6'5", 6'6". As he started to express himself in a more physical manner in the home, it presented some real challenges.